This is the April 23, 2024 meeting of the Bristol Development Review Board. The application for review tonight is permit 24-300 Willowell Foundation of Harvey Road, parcel number 090-219, lot 3 is requesting conditional use permit for an educational facility per Bristol Unified Development Regulations, Article 8, Section 807. It's also site plan review. Because it's a conditional use application. So we have the packet from Bernard and Gervais. So who's come on up? Introduce yourself and
Todd, would you like both of us?
Yeah.
Drag a chair up.
Yeah.
Do whatever. We're easy.
No, it's fine. You forgot it.
you're talking.
No, Scott. So,
Yeah,
yeah, so hi, my name is Scott Baker. And I'm with Barnard and Jarvis. Here on behalf of Tasha Ball with Willowell. And
so Tasha, how do you spell your last name?
TASHBALL with the Willowell
So
Foundation.
you were here for this previous permit, weren't you?
Yeah, about 3 years ago.
Yeah, okay, that's what I seem to remember that. I remember you, sorry.
Hopefully it was the last time.
And don't forget to swear folks in.
Great. So, thank you, Ted.
I beat him to it.
Yeah, I know, but he's lost in the music. That was one of the possible drawbacks.
Isn't this a sketch?
No,
This is a full conditional.
this is
Oh.
CU and site plan.
Okay.
All right, so if you guys raise your right hand and repeat after me, do you solemnly swear that the evidence you should give before this zoning development review board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All right, Scott, you want to walk us through the application?
Yes, certainly. So again, my name is Scott Baker with Barnard and Jarvis, and we have
Stop you for a sec.
yes.
I forgot to say, tell the board, so this. One of the lawyers in my office, Ren Barlow, represents Willowell. So because of that, I'll chair the meeting, but I'm gonna recuse myself from voting in the decision. Go ahead.
So we at Barnard Jarvis have some history with this property overall. It was originally a 16 lot subdivision, residential subdivision, permitted in 2000, between 2006 and 2008 by Terry Thomas, who sadly passed, and the project was rebooted with Act 250 in the town over the past year and a half or so here. And
So it's an amendment to the Act 250 permit.
yes, so we are in the process of applying for an Act 250 amendment specifically for this Willowell project. As Chris may be familiar with, at the 16 lot subdivision, when it went through the Act 250 process, everything was mapped much more precisely. Here, 15 years later, wetlands delineated, ag soils all mapped out and calculated for impact and mitigation, everything. So we have a really good bead on the overall property now, and Willowell is looking to use lot 3 to convert the use from a single family residential use to a preschool. We feel it's a really great location for a school. The name of the school is Friends Nest Forest Preschool, which I'm sure Tasha could talk about, and great that, and perhaps even Rebecca.
Which lot is the existing school on?
It's on a budding property that turns.
Oh, so it's-
Wildwood's Farm, John.
Okay. All right, so it's not on a numbered lot in
It's
this
just-
subdivision.
It's just correct. It's just off of the southern edge of the subdivision. I believe it appears on the S1 overall site plan if Chris pulls it up there.
Share it out. Moment.
And so it's a little bit farther in, trying to get it a more dedicated space out at the kind of the end of this spur of that road that was originally designed in 2006. So the parcel itself is 2.69 acres. It was part of a PUD, which explains the small size in this RA5 zoning district. And it's mostly burdened by a huge archaeological buffer. There's an archaeological site that was identified back in 2006. The site information is protected by the state so that people can't go out and disturb it and get rid of it. So what we do is we provide a buffer that protects anything that might be sensitive back there. That's that hatched area, which you see occupies a good portion of that long site. So focusing in on that development area itself is really a building envelope, I believe 0.3 acres, with 25-foot setbacks on each side and going right up to the archaeological buffer. So it's a very small development footprint out there on this, overall 70-acre PUD. We're really homing in on about 1/4 acre or so for the school there.
So on what am I on? S2, so the red dotted line is the archaeological buffer for the building envelope or the creation of the building envelope?
Yes, the kind of burgundy colored,
Let him pull it up.
Yeah, I'm going,
yes,
please. Oops,
It's S2.
Yeah.
There's-
should be. One here.
There we go. I don't know if the folks online can see, well, you have the hard
there
copy,
you go.
but there's a red dotted line. That depicts the building envelope, right, Scott?
correct.
Okay.
That is that kind of burgundy colored dash line offset 25-foot setbacks from the east and west property lines, 25 feet from the south until it meets the right of way. And then it goes right up to the archaeological buffer, which was I believe it was done by meter. I think it was a 10-meter minimum buffer that was established back in 2008.
So on this S2, the archaeological buffer is at the top end of the map with the long dashed lines,
Correct.
attachment marks. Or whatever.
Correct. It is that diagonal hatching area is the entire Lot 3 archaeological buffer. And it will be demarcated on the ground by boulders, which Act 250 is comfortable using because they provide a fairly permanent marker, but with still allowing wildlife to pass through unlike a fence. So that, and there are that area can be used by the occupants, but the ground cannot be disturbed to disturb any artifacts. So so the state Historic Preservation Office has the guidelines on what can and can't happen within that archaeological buffer. So the school itself is in what's really the kind of the residual space of this lot, which is fairly condensed. And one of the things that Aaron Thomas and Willowwell did with the site, which is wonderful to see from an environmental standpoint. The building, as from my engineering background, my tendency is to cut the trees in the building envelope and put the building right against that building envelope line, and then you've got all the downhill area for your stormwater and infrastructure and anything that flows downhill. In this site, the area that's uphill, kind of to the northeast of the building site, there is this really wonderful forested area. The property line doesn't go, goes through the trees, not along the building. So the building is located there, kind of in the middle. So it's not the most efficient maximum build out of this place, but it's really great because it's preserving those trees back there. And so one of the things that I'm hoping to discuss with you, the board members tonight, and in addition to running through the 5 fundamental conditional use criteria, which we've tried to kind of give you a good head start in the narrative and speak to each of those. Which I think that for the most part, the school fits what the town is looking for. It fits the neighborhood, and I think will be a benefit to the area to have more preschools, which all towns that here are looking for. But coming back to what I was saying about the site and the building orientation, one of the things that is difficult, makes it difficult from a designer and engineering standpoint, when you save all those trees is well, if you're not going to put the stormwater there, where does it go? So the last kind of piece of this puzzle is we are currently working with the stormwater department. Kevin Burke, the senior state stormwater engineer, is in conversation with our stormwater engineer, Brad Washburn, because the site was part of an old credit system that they don't use anymore. They abandoned that credit system. So there are a number of projects in the state that they're kind of bringing up to speed from this old credit that had a certain window. So we still need to take care of the stormwater, but for our engineer, they've got some procedural hoops to jump through. So while he's working that with the stormwater department, one of the things that I'd like to discuss with the board that I hadn't discussed yet was parking. One of the things that I also wanted to point out about this plan that Tasha had kind of stressed to us is safety. One of the conditional use criteria is vehicular and pedestrian access and safety. And one of the things that we're trying to do here with the building in a spot that we feel is very responsive and integrated with the natural landscape, we're also trying to minimize the amount of provide the amount of parking that we need for the project without providing excessive parking that is only going to have more stormwater treatment practices associated with it. So one of the things that this site plan here tries to accomplish is having most of the parking areas that enter directly from the driveway, so that you're not creating separate parking aisles with double loaded parking off of them. We're trying to use that shared drive as the parking aisle. But one of the difficulties, as you can see, this site sloping downward to the kind of west southwest, we have to catch that water and have it go downhill and be treated. One of the things that we're looking at to do that, in order to avoid stormwater treatment, engineered wetland or infiltration trenches at that lower portion of the site, is purchasing an easement from Aaron Thomas to have the stormwater infrastructure go down the toe of that slope. Yeah, and then that slope right there, kind of where it levels off. You might be able to see it on S1, Chris. But to,
Are you looking at like?
if you zoom in right where, just above where your cursor is. That's it, and to the right.
Get back where I was. Zoom away.
So while Chris finds that, so my question for the board is that we'd like to, well, we don't want to, because the school is trying to open this fall. And what we don't want to do is propose a number of parking spaces, say we have 24, and get through stormwater and then have the town come back and say, well, hold on, we need 26, or vice versa. Go through the town with X amount and then have stormwater come back differently. So
It's the minimum the town law.
exactly. So I think two questions. One, what's the minimum that the school needs for smooth pickup and drop off? One of the things that the school does to to disperse that peak hour traffic is having their drop off 18 kids over an hour-long window. When I drop my kids off here at CVU, it's, you know, everybody shows up within 5-10 minutes, and it's insane. So hopefully for preschool, having an hour-long drop-off window spreads those concentrated times and will reduce the demand for that peak maximum parking. So the reason why I asked Chris to zoom into this portion here is, I think you can see a little bit, right where that label is that says preschool educational facility, see site plan drawing S2. That's a slope, probably in the 10-15% slope range that goes down before that levels off. And it's right towards the toe of that slope, probably around between that 340 and 350 contour, maybe 345 or 350, that we'd be looking to collect the water from the site and put it into a gravel wetland. So that we don't have to use more of the condensed school site for stormwater treatment. There's the rest, that lower field there, there's a big note on it that nothing can happen there without a wetland permit. There's that big black arrow of, you don't need to zoom out, but it references site plan note 8C, which says that no development can happen in that field without a wetland permit or a determination from the wetlands program that a wetlands permit is not required.
So would the gravel wetland require a permit?
Only if it intrudes into the buffer. So the gravel wetland itself has a setback, I believe it's 15 feet. I'm not sure, stormwater regulations are their own manual in and of
Yeah.
themselves. But there is a minimum required setback for the gravel, the constructed gravel wetland from the wetland buffer. Part of the reason why I mention this is Jason Barnard is meeting with Zapata Courage in the morning, tomorrow morning, to discuss this. We'd like to have our wetlands person delineate that field, the wetland line through that we know is through that field.
And somewhere around that black area that,
I think it's around that 340 contour.
yeah,
The wetland that turquoise WB line is a riparian buffer. We surveyed in the top of stream bank, and that is a 50-foot offset from the top of stream bank. However, we know that there's wetlands that span across that field.
all right,
So we'd like to have that delineated and have another wetland buffer line on there that probably kind of follows that 340 contour. That will let us offset our 50-foot wetland buffer and hopefully put a gravel wetland stormwater treatment area just downhill there between, probably around that 350, not in there. That's where
Oh.
Chris is circling. That's the wetlands, right?
Right, I'm in over here.
Yes, right at the toe of the slope. So where that slope comes down and bottoms out is where we'd be looking to build the structure to catch the water and have it infiltrate, but above where the wetlands start. So we're planning on having that delineated, getting that wetland buffer in, and
how's the water get down to the wetland, gravel wetland? Just overland flow, or is it channel?
it would probably be,
Somehow.
it would probably be swaled, right? It's
Swaled.
usually directional swale, or if it's too far, it could even be piped, but I don't think we
That's
need
what
to
I was
do that.
asking,
It's in the question about exactly where that would go, obviously the farther north, if there were gravel wetlands slip farther north, then the parking spaces that are farther south have to, have farther to go.
yeah. Mhm.
So that was one of the
That makes sense.
one of the reasons why I wanted to have this discussion before we got into the nitty-gritty of stormwater is, you get down to designing orifice sizes on outlet structures. And one of the things that I'd like to determine for the board is the number of parking spaces. Because like I said, right now we're showing, I think, 24.
It's the issue in our parking is we don't clearly call out educational facility.
Yeah,
Closest we have potentially is a civic use. And that's really weak. I mean, it's
what are
one
you
per,
looking at, 710,
oh yeah, 7-Eleven,
711?
yeah, page 67. Let's do it here.
Yeah.
So like I was saying, the closest is civic use potentially, and that's one per employee plus one per 4 seats in a gathering place, and that's looking more at like a hall, but so unfortunately they didn't. There's not a great mosquito. Oh, sorry. There's not a great answer.
So, but you've sketched in here 14, and at least in the impervious area with 10 overflow, which is just on grass.
Well. To be determined, to me, that's a natural kind of pull off area anyway. Pull off, passing area, snow removal. So it could certainly be grass. We've done overflow parking for a number of event sites with probably more events than the school will have that are all grass parking.
We're tucked way up the top corner, so,
Right,
and it's a
so,
wide road.
so you've
it's
got,
Pretty realistic.
we've got 14 dedicated sites, right?
Yes.
And then 10, and that's gravel driveway or something.
Gravel or grass that might compact over time, but how many events are you envisioning per year?
No, I mean of the 14, this orange, this beige area.
Correct, that was
What's the surface? Impervious.
gravel, yes, yes.
Right.
Impervious gravel.
So we've got 14 dedicated spaces on parking lot proper, and then another 10 available, just that further down the drive on that as overflow on the northeast side of the road.
And one thing that I'd just like to point out, part of this design is that we have the 4 spaces that are all the way up to the south there is what it envisioned as the 4 staff spaces, because you have to cross the driveway. Now, obviously, there's not a lot of traffic there, but one of the goals of this layout is so that when kids get out of cars, they never have to walk behind other cars backing out. And that's the more kind of peachy salmon colored walkway there, so that every car, you get out, you walk forward, and then you can get into the school building without ever having a car looking, at you as they're backing up. So that was, to us, was one of the important design parameters. And referencing those 4 spaces there. One of the reasons why there's a break. And if forget, it might be useful to. One of the ideas I just like to point out is the idea of possibly, if it's too hard to get water to flow along a swale this way, to relocate some of these lower spaces either in this area, still keep a green break tree or something where the property corner pinches in, but relocate some of these spaces back up in here where they're not as crunched into the corner. And that's why I mentioned the question about the number of parking spaces, because if, there might be a difference between 24 and 22, or Tasha said, hey, we really only need 20, we have 3 events per year, and there's 18 kids, and everyone carpools, and we'll parallel park and, overflow parking on that traveled way also. But parking can, on such a small site, parking can have a big impact on the associated stormwater. So, like I said, we feel we have a fairly complete application, except for resolving the parking, but we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves engineering that at that detail.
So the other piece, it's more for in-home care when they talk about 1 per employee point and 1/2 space for
Nursing home.
for client care facilities. So it's tough. I mean, that's
Because those people aren't driving.
right. And nor the kid, I mean, but unfortunately the parents.
Yeah,
are.
but the kids are getting ferried
Yeah.
there. Does a bus come out there? No, okay. So we've got to assume, since these are preschoolers, that you're gonna have 18 drop-offs if you have 18 kids.
Mhm.
I mean, there might be some multi-child families, but probably,
Yeah,
We have to
it's pretty
assume-
much individual. People don't.
yeah.
Car seats are a beast to get in and out.
Do you ever have 18 all there at once, or do you find
We
that
never,
it's-
it's a rolling drop off from 8 to 9, so I'd say on average, what would you, as a parent?
So my daughter was in Ren's Nest last year, and I would say most times it drop off. In the winter, it was only like maybe 4 or 5 cars at the most, but in the summertime, we would sometimes coincide more and there'd be like maybe 6 or 7 cars at the same time. But drop off is relatively fast, less than 5 minutes, I would say. Sometimes pickup parents can stay a little bit longer, but it still wasn't a huge amount of traffic or. a
And
lot of
pickup is
cars
even different,
parking.
because we have 2 staggered, we have a 2:30 pickup and a 4:30 pickup, so.
That's true,
It's
yeah.
pretty staggered, so it's pretty unheard of that they would all drop off at the same moment.
Yeah, but
John Moore
mean,
keeps
the-
raising his hand, sorry, I'm not running this meeting.
No, no, thank you.
go ahead, John.
Just a couple of questions to make sure I'm caught up. Well, one question, one comment. So if I understand, you're asking, to not build out all the parking that might be required of you, depending on how we read the regs, at the moment. That's one question. And then my thought is, as far as infiltration of stormwater, surface water, I'm just wondering if, I think if I'm reading the map right here, as I'm looking at it, to the northeast of the walkway that's at the forward part of the parking shown on here. Could you cut into that? But that's uphill, but could you cut in northeast of that, that sidewalk and have some infiltration happen there as a way of lessening the impoundment or whatever the infiltration situation you want to create down slope of the building?
We have looked at that, but I think that it's pretty flat up there. The alternative way of using that space that we had looked at was not to put stormwater treatment there, but to put parking there. And to still have the stormwater be more downhill to the west.
And I don't know how it correlates to the well, but currently the well is spec to be about, yeah, right about there, Chris, where you're.
Right, so you're being sensitive to that, sure.
And I don't know how those things interact, but that's where it's spec to go in.
Right, so that does impact it. So there used to be a 10-foot setback from a well to a structure, and I believe that was eliminated in the previous edition of the water supply regulations, because we now have wells within 5 feet of structures. But there's actually more of a setback for stormwater basins, trenches and basins from wells. Again, I'm not familiar with them, but my stormwater engineer was mentioning them this morning, as he has setbacks from wells and wetland buffers, anything where there's water in the ground. The parking's actually easier. But yes, there is space there, and again, that's the wooded portion of the parcel that I think it would be nice if the school can save that portion of the property and find a less impactful, way to treat the stormwater. If we can put it in a way that it follows that slope naturally. We use one side of it as the side of a bathtub, instead of trying to use the space that's so tempting to use that's right there. I hear you, John. Believe me, I like I said at the start of this meeting, the engineer side of me, the right brain, wanted to come in and clear cut right to the building envelope and put all the parking and building right along that side. But I think that the site works really well as they've done it, and I just really love to find a way to keep those.
There's some
That's-
nice old
that-
growth,
Yeah.
nice
Yeah.
old growth, but established, nice trees in that woods right there that we kept.
Is the building there?
Just a follow-up question, where the cursor is now, there northeast of the parking zone shown, is that a separate lot that's a buildable lot?
No,
That is a separate lot owned by the estate of Greg Forrest. So you can see right that forest parcel comes into a point right by the walkway.
Mhm.
And is that a, excuse me, is that a buildable lot?
There's an existing residence on that parcel. It's an existing developed residential parcel.
Okay, thank you.
So are they not? To split hairs, they're not asking for something less, for parking wise than section 711 requires, because section 711 doesn't actually tell us anything about this proposed use.
We're looking for clarity,
Right.
we're not looking for a leeway. We're looking for just clarity and hopefully a decision. What we, just because the school year doesn't slow down. So we're just trying to avoid any spot with the state where we have a kickback or a redo or something can really add time. Just for reference, when I called the state stormwater department to renew the stormwater permit for Aaron Thomas, a permit that the same department had already renewed 2 or 3 times every 5 years for the past since 2008. I was told it would be a 3 to 4 month technical review. Okay, I had to call back twice, almost screaming on the phone to Megan McIntyre and Aaron Ferraro at the stormwater department to tell them that there are jobs here, there's school, there's how can there possibly be a 4-month technical review to literally sign a 1 8.5 by 11 piece of paper? So the stormwater permitting with the state can be so slow that we don't want kickbacks. What I'd like to do is get a sense of what parking the school really thinks they need, how many spaces the town says, okay, this is great, and then have our engineer work with the stormwater department to pin it down, hopefully, in one shot. But
Yeah, well, I guess we could, it's right for decision tonight that's what the board wants to do, and if the state changes things on you where you have to move those 4 lots to the south of the driveway, then you're gonna have to get an amendment on site plan. Or you'd have to come back, if the state forces your hand to make this S2 and S1 no longer operative, then you're gonna have to come back, so it's a question we could have a vote on what we think the parking requirements will be. And you can go and work with the state on that basis, and then when it's done, come back. Or you can run the risk that the state tells you something different, in which case you're gonna have to have an amendment before you can even build. Well, before you can start operating the school. I don't know what, that's a risk.
sure, so here's one other idea. What about tonight? Because as you're absolutely right, as part of the procedural just sequence, there's notifications and we don't want amendments to conditional use permits,
Right.
So what about the idea of, so I think for Willowwell, ideally, they'd be able to walk away from here saying, okay, we got town approval, and then that would be conditioned upon the state stormwater permit being issued. That would be in an ideal world. What I'm hearing you say is that the flaw with that is that because this conditional use requires site plan review, if the site plan changes, that would be an amendment.
Well,
So
that's part of it, but also just as part of pure conditional use, we have to address parking.
Mhm.
So we'd be referencing parking on S1. And if the state screwed up your plans and made you change where the parking layouts would be, even if we weren't talking about site plan, you still need an amendment on CU.
So
here's
one
my
question I
idea.
have for you, and this is just for clarity. When your existing facility, what's your student population? Is it the same 18 students?
it's 15 a day.
And what's the requirements of that, because this board placed requirements on that site based on. And
It's under the prior regs, I think.
Yeah, and-
But the parking probably didn't.
the parking
change.
hasn't changed.
Well, I can remember something about the parking, but said there was a sort of a pull-off
Down
spot down by. the-
below for drop off.
Down by the highway, and it was farther away from the school building, and so we.
Because I don't know how many
figured-
spots they had up above.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I don't have that in front of me.
It's not-
Well, I mean, I think we've got enough with for right now, as far as number of spaces, we've got 18 kids and 4 staff members, that's 22, and there's 24 spaces on that drawing in that configuration. If there's a heavy time when the drop-offs are concentrated, some people may be parking in the overflow, but they've still got the walkway for the kids on the overflow, so it seems to me like you've got enough as is.
Oh, I absolutely think we have enough. In fact, I think my thing is, I think we have maybe more than we need. And that's why I think that the critical, so I think 2 things, back to what I was saying is, I don't think this is something that we need to, I don't think the hearing needs to be closed tonight with an amendment. Because the way I've done this in past with my town of St. George, we could continue the hearing.
Right.
So,
To
right,
dates- to a date certain.
exactly. So what we can do is say, what we could do is try to get through the other conditional use criteria. Are there questions on the capacity of community facilities and services and character of the area? And, transportation.
Yep.
And then the
the-
parking and stormwater is, I think, to me, the trickiest part of this conditional use application. So if we could continue the hearing, once I realize we haven't received all of the comments yet, of course.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
right, after the board can ask as many questions about as many things as it wants tonight, even if we're gonna continue to a date certain, there wouldn't be a decision.
Right.
Until that next hearing, just with your crystal ball, the clarity of your crystal ball, which mine's never very good, especially when predicting when the state would do something. When do you think, if we were to continue to a date certain, how far out would that should that be in order to give us a reasonable prospect of actually convening that hearing and finishing the hearing, rather than convening, saying, well, we still need more time, and then bump into another date certain, because then we still have to all come together to do that.
Sure. So I think, definitely not 2 weeks. I don't know how frequently this board meets. Is it one?
We have.
First and third Tuesday.
Is our scheduled time, so there are plenty of times that we don't have a meeting.
Sure, okay.
So we would be, we've got flexibility to bump it out as far as you think is reasonably likely, short enough, but reasonably likely to make the next hearing a final hearing.
I hear you. I understand that, and I think I can answer that. My target would be 4 weeks, because I think that we could have the stormwater engineer coordinate with Kevin Burke. In time, 3 weeks would give me a target of getting an updated plan, at least one that has been legitimately reviewed by Kevin Burke. In 3 weeks would be my
Yeah,
target.
but in the worst case scenario, when they make you move something, you're gonna have to generate a new. plan
So
and get it-
that's what I was gonna suggest. So 3 weeks puts you at the 21st of May. 4 weeks puts you at 21st. If you bumped it to June 4, that would give you 6 weeks in case
Yeah.
the state throws you a curveball. We're not all scurrying and having to do it again. If June 4, I think would be a safe.
It'd be, June 4th would be, the May 21st would definitely be tight. I mean, I guarantee you, I can draft faster than the state can review.
Right,
So that's one of the tough things is, but I think that is,
and it goes to the bottom of the pile a lot of times, when you present something new in, there's, now you gotta wait again.
but I think with this one, like I said, Brad Washburn has been in touch with Kevin Burke. They're
Yeah.
aware that it's a school
Yeah.
and I think that it has to get done. We have to, the water has to go someplace.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reasonable,
Where's the water been going?
Well, it's only been a house.
good question. Yes, so the original,
Excuse me, it's been a school, right?
No,
it's
It's an empty lot at the moment.
right, so it was,
there's
so
a school on a different lot.
Oh,
Right, so this was originally permitted as a residential. As a residential project, so even with the residential stormwater requirements, you still have to accommodate the water on site, so that's typically done with what's called simple disconnection or rain gutters. When you get into a more, like this is a more impervious surface on this parcel than you would have for a single family residence. Where a driveway, typically, if your soils are decent, a driveway parking area only needs an equal amount of area for that water to disconnect from the natural system, and infiltrate. So that's the difference of your question, is that right now, this is a residential structure. The Act 250 permit and this conditional use permit application are to change the use from single family to educational facility, and with that comes a bump up in the associated impervious area from the parking. And there's also additional water testing requirements that our office is on top of. It's all covered in the state permit. But that's one of the increases is the.
Yeah,
But
I thought earlier that somebody had said that building was already there, so.
Right, so Aaron's in the middle of building it now, so Aaron
Okay,
Thomas
so
is the
it
land.
Being
It's half done.
constructed,
Yep, so Aaron's plan was to build it as a home,
okay,
and if this goes through, he will shift gears and,
okay.
but if not, it's gonna be a single family home. So if this doesn't pass, I think its use will be.
But the existing
construction.
school is nearby.
Yeah, the existing school is down just literally down the road.
Okay.
So you talked about getting an easement from him
Yes.
to do what, where?
Stormwater.
Stormwater,
On what we were looking at before?
yes,
Is
it
that-
Go back to
Is that
S-
his property?
It is,
We'll go-
but it's basically unusable.
We'll go back,
Yeah.
we'll go back to S2.
Okay.
It actually, where Chris is, I don't have just my trusty laser pointer here. So here we see the school building here with the parking, and then from about this 370 contour to 345, you see that's a pretty tight slope. It slopes down and then it flattens out. So what our engineer is looking at doing is, instead of trying to collect the water here and close to the building along the property line, if he can collect it and then have it come down the slope here, wherever that wetland boundary gets drawn, we know that there are wetlands on this field here, that's what this arrow indicates. But wherever that line gets drawn, we offset 50 feet, then we can collect this water down into swale, into a gravel wetland. And have it be below
So that
the
gravel,
main school property.
so he would allow you to build that gravel wetland on his property?
It would be, yes, we get.
Okay.
Within an easement, and part of that too is that this, if you, don't need to read it right now, but that entire field there is not developable.
Mhm.
You can't put a hotel there, that is complete wetlands, in fact, when we were out there, there was so little prospect of doing anything out there that we didn't delineate it at that time. The turquoise wetland buffer that you see line is the riparian buffer from the offset from the top of stream bank, but that whole field had wetlands through it. So that's why there's not much use for that field other than supporting wildlife. But a gravel wetland stormwater along the toe of that slope could be about the best development potential
But
for
that-
So
that's through an easement that you don't have yet.
correct.
No, but he's
But-
been pretty flexible
but if
in
you-
terms of the easement for the overflow parking.
But
Because
if-
that lot is,
If the state likes your plan,
Mhm.
they're gonna require that easement as part of the stormwater.
yeah. We
Yeah.
are, and we, as part of our permit also has an easement for the right of way for the parking. The parking on the far left corner isn't technically our land, but he's given us that, or the far right corner.
Which one?
the 10 overflow parking spaces.
That-
Oh, that's on lot, oh, I see, that's lot 2.
Ren wrote that in, that's all legally,
Yeah.
it's all set and everything.
Yes, okay.
That to us, so he's been pretty flexible about it.
And one of the things that we did specifically for this project is the original well, not only for this, but there's also the right of way to access now is 50 feet. And so we prepared a survey plat. This was originally never platted in 2008, which was kind of one of the problems of this project. So one of the things we did is we prepared a survey plat. We did it for the developable parcels. And so that we could actually legally describe all of these boundaries and their building envelopes and their easements, which hopefully will make Chris's life much easier in the future. But having done that work means that we have all of these files at our fingertips. So it's easy, very easy for us to pop on an easement and you know, write in whatever, size it how we need to, and that's it. And of course, Aaron wants us to work too. So so that's the approach that we're on, is that we love the property, we love what Aaron and Tasha have done with the building, and we want to try to find the best solution to handle the water with the appropriate amount of parking, not too much, not too little.
So the other piece too, just so you can put where this is in the world as far as wet and how wet it is down there. This box that you see here and this along Route 116, that's 116. This is just after you cross over the bridge by Sycamore Park. As you're looking to the left, as you're heading south, all that wet swamp that you're seeing, that's what this big flat is.
Okay.
So
Right.
it's that nothing will ever build there.
No,
So I just want to give people like,
Yeah, that's
so they
for
can,
damn sure.
yeah, so they can just get a realistic feel for where they are.
Does anybody on the board feel that the 24 parking spots as depicted is insufficient for the proposed use?
no.
No.
I have a question. No, I do not feel it is insufficient. So that's a direct answer to that. Good question. My question though is, you're asking us tonight, like what you're showing, the 24 that is, like that's gonna be built out initially. You're going there.
It depends on what the state says.
That is our goal, would be to build what we need with the what I call the on-site parking spaces in a you know, a gravel surface. We do have a handicap space there, obviously, and then the overflow spaces I'd have to see just how level that area it is, but they would, if necessary, they
It's dry and. park there.
level. Okay, there you go. So it doesn't.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
It's level and it's dry and I park there all the time.
And what area are you referring to there?
That
10.
overflow.
The
Those
10
are the overflow, but you will build those out? You're asking us for permission to go ahead and build those out now, or not to build those out now?
They're already basically, the space is there. It's more just permission to actually park cars there. And I'd have a dedicated
the
walkway.
sidewalk's not there yet.
Right, the
Right.
dedicated gravel path walkway.
Right.
But that's going in there, and that will begin to delineate those more officially, the way you show them delineated here. Like, if I read you right, it's more of an informal pull aside sort of thing right now.
Yeah, well,
but-
the overflow parking is more of an informal and it's for when we have events, which is 3 times a year probably.
Right, so I'm just trying to get a grip on the plan we're considering tonight is to go ahead and build all this parking out as seen, as shown.
Right, except we're not
Unless
we're
we
not
don't-
voting on anything tonight.
Unless we don't, John.
No, but that's your proposal, yes?
Yes.
Correct.
And-
Right.
and, I mean, I think you'll never regret having some more parking, you know, but let me say this too, when I built out a big building in town, and I did my best right in the middle of the village to comport with the required parking, like comparing the square footage and the use times how many parking spots you need. It was really, really hard to fit that in, right? And the town granted me some flexibility to do that as needed nonetheless, I have really what turned out to be a kind of an overbuilt parking lot. So I'm just trying to get a sense of how you might be maybe planning for approval of all of this, but maybe not building some of it out now, but and how that affects your negotiation or whatever with the state and their rules.
Yeah, a great question, John, and again, that's the balancing act of having enough parking without too much, and then how do you tie all that together with, so that all the permits line up as well. I think that for the stormwater permit, whatever is going to be there as impervious surface, we have to show, we have to get a permit for it. There is the potential not to build it immediately, provided not building that spot does not adversely impact the stormwater management system, that the water is still going where it needs to go, even if there's less of it.
Look, can I
The-
break in just for a sec? So is, I could probably see this if I zoomed in on the map some, but I haven't called up my own map, so I'm just looking at the Zoom shared thing. But how much, if any, of what you're showing us here on this map is impervious versus, permeable surface?
Another good question. Yes, so the beige, the kind of yellow hatch is impervious gravel surface that would be driving access aisle and parking spaces. The pink color there is also intended to be impervious gravel walkway, but differentiated in color and texture from the parking. And then the last, so I'm sorry, two more pieces. Obviously, the roadway or the shared drive, which has that gray hatch, is also obviously gravel drive. And then the building itself, which we have not colored, but it shows the rectangular building, the porch, and a bulkhead basement entrance off the north end.
Nothing's going down there in that footprint,
Yes,
right? So none of it's asphalt, though. It's all gravel packed.
correct.
Still impervious as far as the state is concerned.
Right, right. And that's really relevant only to the state, not to us, right, Kevin?
Also,
I'm just wondering, like, we're not considering that, like, the state is really considering this wastewater.
yeah, we don't, right, that's outside our. I mean,
Yeah,
most we would say is you have to get a stormwater permit.
right,
Which they have to do anyway.
right.
So, um,
So again, just to clarify, so the proposal before us tonight is to go ahead and have all this 24 spots as shown here, delineated as shown here.
Possibly, my sense is that if we could do less parking, or even that idea John was saying of engineer do the stormwater permitting for 24, but maybe if there's 4 spaces that don't need to be built just yet, and if Tasha finds that, hey, school is so popular that people are lingering at drop off and pick up, and we really need those extra spots, then they get built out. So John, I think, there's certainly the chance for that. And I think that any spaces that wouldn't get built out just yet would probably be ones that would be lower down. That they would the water would kind of infiltrate over them until they needed to be turned into gravel and packed down. I think that's certainly something that we can consider and could work to build in some flexibility.
you're gonna
Yeah,
need.
well, I would address this to my fellow board members after this conversation, which is, if I'm grasping this right, I mean, I'm comfortable with less than the 24. If you think you can live with that, as long as if ever you needed 24, we had a properly permitted space for you to build all of that out. I'm comfortable not having to build all of that out, especially if that helps you negotiate with the state about the wastewater situation, although I guess you have to talk to them as if it were, this is where my knowledge fails, but as if it were built out for 24, but I don't feel as, not trying to speak for the state, but I don't feel like we want to compel you to build it all out now, especially if you don't feel you need it, you know?
No, I think I understand what you're saying, John. I think you're right. We could, the way to do that would be to prepare the site plans that show the full 24, have that be permitted, have the stormwater treatment be sized for that as it would need to be for the state. But that if it so worked out, then perhaps some of those spaces two or four something maybe didn't get converted to impervious packed gravel just yet. So I do see where you're coming from. Obviously we always like the idea of minimizing impact where we can, provided the whole operation still works. But yeah, I think we could certainly explore that.
Yep. I again, to the board, I'm comfortable with an approach like that.
I think it makes sense to see what the state says and.
If you were going with kind of a minimum parking space arrangement, what are the spaces that you see yourself not building initially?
Good question. Probably the ones that are downhill. I think that looking at this, the ones that are trickiest to accommodate
Well, they've got no, give us the numbers. So you're talking about 10 and 9 or
11,
Oh.
12, 13, 14
DAP lots?
are very convenient spaces to tuck in there, but it's hard to get the water going to a more centralized collection area because the ground naturally flows away more towards the south of there. You're kind of getting away towards from that western slope and more on the southern slope. So there, it's a little bit trickier. So those four are the ones that my intuition tells me would be the first ones to swing around and occupy some more of this space in here. There's a swath in here where you could fit a number of spaces. Where this pinches in and constricts the space, you'd have a green break. Just as in a parking lot, you never want 20, 30 spaces in a row. You want to have 10 or 12, have a green break, and then have some more. This little pinch point of the abutting parcel in a way provides that naturally. You have one bank of parking, a break, and then put some more in here. Again, I don't want to come this more into there, but that's where two spaces might be the difference between another 20 feet of trees.
With the, Brenda's wanted to speak here for a while, but I have a question before we turn it over to her. Where's the water flow from those 10 lower spots, on the road and, the undeveloped stuff, the undeveloped land slots?
Those are grass
They're grass now.
and they stay grass.
They're gonna stay grass. Okay,
Right.
all right, fine.
They might also, if they were, I'll check with our engineer, but if they were compacted over time, and I'm not sure how the state views that of having grass parking that gets compacted over time through a lot of use, if that would need a tributary area of disconnection area off the.
And where would that flow if those were developed?
It would have to go to the north. So we have some space there before you get to the wetland buffer going down to the stream in the middle. So that triangular area back there has usable space. But it would need to be back there. But I don't think that for temporary parking like that, it's necessary. Only because we did a project down in Goshen at an inn, and they have huge events of hundreds of people coming in several times in the summer, 10 events of 200-300 people, and they all park in the fields. And they didn't make us do anything for that. We had impervious area for the dedicated in parking space in the buildings, but all that field
Shelby
park.
Museum.
Exactly, yeah,
I mean, that's packed several nights a week for several months.
Same thing.
It's all grass.
right. So I think that for the scale of events that Willowville is looking to have, I don't see that as being like becoming a really packed, I mean, just the freeze thaw cycle is gonna re-loosen that probably over time more than the frequency of vehicles packing it down.
Well, it's
But
like-
again, part of one of the conditions that generally I'm used to writing into any decision is that all of the stormwater infrastructure must be maintained. And if it fails, then it's the landowner's responsibility to deal with that and to remedy it. And so I think that that's something that could be, that the town and neighbors could be protected from future, if that ever were used too intensely, that a simple condition like that could protect the town and future landowners more than stormwater infrastructure and treatment.
So Brenda, you've been patient. What was your question?
Wasn't a question, it was a comment on parking. And as a practical sort of thing, of course, we need the 4 for the staff. And under ordinary circumstances, most of the other parking won't be filled because it'll be just sort of one parent, one child and dropping them off. However, whenever they have any sort of all-school gathering, you need to assume that all 18 of your parents are going to come and watch their child perform or see what they admire their work or whatever. So you must have, besides the 4, you must have at least 18 that are available whenever they have something special. So, for everyday parking, not many, but for the other, you certainly need the extra parking that you put along the driveway. Thank you.
So,
Would it be possible to add any to your existing 10 overflow spaces if you were to add 2 to that say? 'Cause I feel like that minus the 4 would get you to kind of the
There-
comfort level I'm hearing.
Yes, there are more, and in fact, I think at one point I did have 2 more spaces out at the end, and again, at one point, does the design process I described as a dampening sine wave, where you're kind of all over the place and it slowly comes into focus, and part of that, in all the parking we looked at, I think we had locked a couple off there.
We should have just put them in.
Yeah,
before
Dan,
it
but,
goes to the
um,
legal
I mean,
Clerk's office.
the board's been unanimous that no one feels on the present plan that 24 is insufficient. It's not you're looking for guidance, that's the guidance we can give you on this plan. If you're gonna propose something less with a different plan, we'd actually have to have that plan before us to review, so we can't,
So again,
we
Scott,
can't design on the fly.
just for clarity, you've talked a lot of different designs. If there would it be spots 9 and 10 you were talking about that possibly sacrificing if you had to do stormwater? To be these.
Yeah, precisely. I think that the ones that are most difficult most challenging to accommodate are 9 and 10. And then also 11 through 14.
Oh, okay, those lower ones.
And I think, and I agree with what Brenda was saying about the 18 spaces, because you need, when everyone's there, you need to park and everything. And so I agree. I think we saw 18 as the absolute minimum. We've put in 24, but maybe there might be some balance in there. If Rebecca and Tasha are saying that for 15 student school enrollment, that you're having 6 to 7, maybe we have, for 18 kids, maybe you're at 8 to 10 plus 4 staff. So you're at 12 to 14, for those permanent spots, but
What I ask is what my only suggestion would be possibly to parse out, if you parsed out 9 and 10 today,
And just put them over on. the
don't
overflow.
even, because it still gives you that still gives you plenty. Because that would give you 8 up above and 10 down below, that's 18, and that's what you're talking about, plus 4 for your staff. I'm just doing basic math in my head. So,
Well, yeah, but right,
So that would put you at the number that you're talking about. It would give you as with the state from your stormwater, that those two spaces give you a lot of wiggle room as far as design potential.
They could, I think, we're, with the term I use in design, we're at a stage now where we're pinching inches,
Yeah.
literally, so. And that's where, when you get down to calculating orifice sizes on outlet structures that,
Yeah.
a space or two can make a difference.
Can we just hack 9 and 10 and approve that tonight, or you need a whole new?
We're
site
we're
plan?
not approving anything tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
But
can't,
probably just curious
we
what the
can't, we
process
can't
is. You-
approve in piecemeal form.
Right, and also approving it tonight in this form, if it changed, would only slow down the process.
Okay.
Part of-
Tremendously.
Right, so part of the idea of keeping it open is to come back in 3 or 4 weeks with that plan, which we need anyway for stormwater. And then have the net, what are called the next iteration.
Yeah, you've essentially asked us for a weather report. We've given a weather report.
Exactly.
And, and there's, I think the board's thing, I've heard is that, there's some flexibility. That of less than 24, maybe 2 less than 24 if needed. Depending on what the things apply with the state, so.
I think that's doable. I think we have some options, even with getting rid of possibly a 2. And even moving.
Yeah.
Below us.
Okay.
Does anybody, at the end, I always am unduly optimistic when I estimate how quickly things are gonna happen, so I like the idea of going out 6 weeks at the end of this, rather than 4. The majority of the time that we've picked a date with someone, we've had to convene and then bump it. Not all the time, but most of the time, and so, 6 gives us a window. We'll do that at the end. Does anybody have any questions about aspects of the conditional use application aside from parking? John?
Yeah, quick couple of things on lighting. I appreciate the details that you gave us on lighting. Thank you. I noted that your lighting fixtures are available in 3 color temperatures, 3,000, 4,000, and I think 5,000. I'd like to note and could attach a condition potentially. I'd like to keep those color temperatures in your exterior lighting to 3,000 K, because the American Medical Association has noted that anything over that, the lighting in the 4,000 and up range is agitating to the mind. That's my phrase, not theirs, but so if you don't mind attending to that, thinking about 3,000 K fixtures. Also on some of the panel fixtures, the LED panel fixtures, when they're, you can see this if you go into the Shaw's parking lot or anywhere around town where these similar fixtures have been installed. While they're called shielded, they're really not. And it's possible when they're up at elevation on a building side or a pole or something like that, that you clearly see the light source, the LED emitters. And so I hope you'll tend to, thinking about the down shielding of lights, as well as the color temperature of lights. Since we're not deciding anything tonight, I don't need a vote or anything on that, but those are issues that are important to me, and they're in the regs too, as far as downlighting, that sort of thing go. So
Are there other standards or bodies that you need to satisfy with respect to lighting? Is there any other, I don't know if there's something that applies to schools and lighting for parking lots. I have no idea.
No, Act 250 is mostly concerned with reducing light,
Right.
not so much making sure that there's enough light.
Yeah, I just thought maybe with the school, there might be something. going on.
Is the state like education board, do they have certain standards you have to meet? Do you have to have
It
certain?
runs through the Child Development Division and they have a 50-page manual that we have to adhere to.
Yeah, but I'm saying in that
We run till 4:30, so for 3 months of the year, we have a half hour of darkness when we're in session.
Okay, so I just wanted to make clear that if there are other constraints on you with respect, your operation with respect to lighting, we would need you to tell us.
Right, again, where I'm going with this is if the Board of Ed said, hey, you need to have, these have to be 4,000 Ks.
5,000 K, yeah.
So make sure because if they permit you with 3 and they need to be 5, you'd have to come back in.
CDC never, there's not, I don't think
Okay.
there's even.
I would just double check that.
Page about
Yes.
lighting.
Yeah, that was
Yes,
just,
yes, thank you for checking what, and I appreciate that, because what we don't want to have is a conflict where the town is requiring something be under a threshold, whereas a different
Right.
body is requiring it be over a threshold, and then you have a conflict, so I appreciate that. And I do agree with John on the lighting color. My eyes are terrible with fluorescent lights and bright lights. And I think that those warmer colored lights are just much more easier on the eyes, better for the neighbors, any of the occupants, everyone. So I agree with the 3,000, the warmer 3,000 color, well, cooler temperature, warmer color. And then for the John, for the shielded lights, I think that and I don't have the actual spec sheets in front of me from the architect. But I think that he was looking at having the slim packs along the walls to light the lighting surfaces. Some of those are under the porch, but it's the 2 wall pack fixtures, like John was saying, that are mounted higher at the gable ends. And those are to provide at least a little bit of area lighting. So John's point is absolutely right. Those lights are higher up to spread more. And it's a good question. I'm not sure just how much you can see that, or how disturbing it is to have them up higher at that, in that mounted to the gable wall.
Yep, well, the general rule of thumb to keep in mind that's helpful is keep light on the property. So if you're, to whatever extent you shield it, property owner's light doesn't need to be used on the other property owner's property, so like the good rule of thumb is shield it to the point that it stays within the property lines. That's a good general rule. And Bristol's regs do mention that too. It shouldn't violate the property lines.
Did we lose Brenda? Oh, she's there. Any other questions that would be helpful to get some background on tonight or detail on tonight? Okay,
do your,
what?
you want to try to knock out as much of your,
No, because we have to do it again.
okay.
I mean, just be an advisory act, and what they really need guidance on is parking. They've got their wastewater and water supply permits. You hopefully have the stormwater permit in hand. You've already got a school nearby, and so the rest doesn't seem problematic to me.
And we have the property is covered by all of the permits. The Act 250 issued the permit. Now it's updating these permits specifically for the school.
Right, but you don't have the Act 250 amendment yet for the school yet either, do you?
No, because good question. Part of this process is for the Act 250 amendment is the Act 250 district coordinators will not deem an application complete until the stormwater NOI has been issued, and until their new policy to cut back the application time is they require preliminary comments from major state agencies, meaning the Ag Agency, ANR, and Historic Preservation. They need their preliminary comments or to deem the application complete. That's all been started. This plan actually was sent to those agencies several weeks ago to get those comments back. So that is all in process. So the big agencies have been been made aware, and the only one that that is is yet to be pinned down is stormwater. Just gotta get the water going to the right place.
Any other
That's hard.
questions, Brenda?
Not about this, no.
Okay. So what's the date? Please?
It is June. June 4.
Okay, can I have a motion to continue this hearing to June 4? Ted,
So-
it's a motion. Second,
Aye.
Dale seconds, so I'm not voting, so all those in favor of continuing this hearing to the date certain of June 4, raise your hand. So Dale, we got 5.
Yep.
5-0, and I'm recused for the virtual minute taker.
You will appreciate that.
Yeah, okay, so we'll see you then. So you've got, I think you
We'll be,
got a good handle, I think, from what the board's thinking about.
yes, it will be in
flexibility.
touch. We'll be in touch before then. So but also, thank you to the board for really, a collaborative session here. It's been helpful to understand the constraints and to make sure there are considerations rather and just make sure there's nothing else that's really gonna be a huge monkey wrench
Yeah,
into this. We'd hate to go through all the work in stormwater only to find out there's some other big elephant in the room.
right.
So I think we have clear direction. We will go back, get to work with the stormwater engineer and with the state and be in touch with Chris here. So the goal would be to have a progress report for you within the next 4 or 5 weeks, something to have enough
Yeah.
time to review before the next meeting.
Yeah, and if you're not gonna make it, let us know ahead of time. We'll still have to convene and then vote to a new date certain. You can show it virtually for that. If that happens, we hope it doesn't, but if that happens, then we'll have to reconvene. It'll be a quick hearing unless we have something else going on that night. But sometimes we've had to come in just for that.
Yes, we have.
My goal, June 4th, we're all working diligently to get the kids in school. And so.
Have to have laps in programming,
Yeah, sure.
24 kids enrolled.
Exactly, so
Yeah, we've
So-
got summer programs too. Well, the
Not
building
here.
won't be done yet,
We
right?
will have several programs here, but yeah, I have a lot of employees, right, and staff is my biggest concern.
Yeah,
They've
and-
been with us for a long time, and you don't wanna have lapse in employment.
Right.
yeah, and for us, this project has been at the forefront of our list. And it's mostly a matter of getting through a lot of state hoops. But the town has been great through the whole process, even for the rebooting this whole subdivision in the past. So again, appreciate your help with the project. I think we have a clear direction on our next steps, and we'll do those, coordinate with the state, and then report back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, because if all goes as planned, if you have all your ducks in a row, June 6th, you should have a decision out of this
Well,
board
we,
potentially.
most times, not always, but most times we're able to make a decision at the final hearing without having to go into deliberative session. Sometimes we do, but usually we don't.
Sure.
But then the appeal period wouldn't start to, we will then have met the deemed approval clock by the public announcement of the decision, but the appeal period wouldn't start until the written decision actually comes
Issued.
out. And so, we'll get,
How long is that period?
what,
45 days.
No,
What's
30
the-
30 days for
the-
appeal.
The
Okay,
appeal period is
30
40
days.
Oh, sorry, 45 days to
It-
issue, to write the
it-
decision, right?
No, well, no, it's 45, it's a little bit nuanced. It's 45 days for the board to render a decision. That, which is different than writing. So if we announce the decision at the open meeting, we've rendered, we've met that hurdle. I always get the decisions out within that 45-day period anyway, but the 45-day deemed approval clock becomes irrelevant if we announce a decision in public at that meeting, or whenever we do. But the logistics are we have somebody who's gonna look at the tape and produce minutes. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get minutes, and then I gotta get it around to writing it. You know, so,
I will push her on these to make sure they're,
well, doesn't really matter too much because we're coming back in 6 weeks.
no, I'm
but-
saying in general, I've been trying to get her.
Yeah, so there's some. I don't want you to think that you're counting 30, that you're good 30 days from June 4, because you won't have a written decision yet, and conditional use decisions typically have something in, you know, there's some substance there. But whenever the written decision comes out, you've got a 30-day appeal period before the permit becomes final.
And that's for the neighbors to appeal, abutting property.
Yeah, well,
Interested parties.
right, but so it's interested parties who actually appeared. And so if no one appeared, you can be pretty confident that there's not gonna be appeal, but that doesn't mean somebody who didn't appear doesn't throw in an appeal that will have to get tossed.
And you have to more than appear, you have to participate in the hearing either verbally or in writing. You can't just show up and say, well, I was sitting there. so
Yeah, it's a low bar.
Yeah.
You have
It's
to
a really
participate.
low bar.
Reese appealed before.
Yeah, so even a letter coming can do it, so there are situations where there has been no interested party who participated. But that doesn't mean you have an actual final permit the day that it comes out.
Maybe
You
making
don't.
me nervous. Should we do 4 weeks instead of 6?
No, because,
Yeah, it's-
no, but.
Maybe if we do 4, you're actually gonna have a lot longer out.
Yeah, and the house is being built anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a long licensing project process that happens after them, but yeah.
But that's on a parallel track, right? Or do you have to have your zoning permit?
I have to have my zoning permit.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow,
to get the CDC involved. And get the
Okay.
licensing
Wow.
started.
who knows?
So now with their approval, or do you have to have the appeal period for the CDC license?
I don't know, but they're gonna wanna see that everybody approves it.
Check with that, because if it's just a matter of the board approval, then that may shorten that window for you, so double check that.
Everybody wants to see this happen. There's a childcare shortage in the state.
Sure.
Nobody's.
Yeah, so we'll try to be as timely as possible to help make that happen, but
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight.
Thank you,
And
everybody.
yeah, and we understand, and that's why, we'll be diligent about getting the stormwater engineering underway, and then, like I said, my goal would be to get the board, new materials in time to, review.
Yeah, if there's a new site plan, get it to us sooner rather than later, and so people can see it ahead of time. Make the hearing go faster.
That's the.
Okay, anything else from anybody? Hi, Brenda.
I have a question. Who are the board members who are present? I know there's you, me, and John. I think Tom. Are
No,
there any other board members present?
yes, we have Dale and our newest board member. Have you met Brenda?
No,
Okay, that's Tom. Who's Dale?
Dale Dangler.
so in order for the camera to pick you up, you have to speak, so I'm gonna stop speaking, one of them will speak and introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Rebecca.
Oh, okay.
Newest board member, first meeting for me.
And I'm Dale Dengler.
Ah,
There you go, right there, don't move.
So.
What's your last name, Rebecca?
Cole.
Rebecca Cole.
okay, thank you.
Rebecca's our newest board member, meet our oldest board member.
Yeah.
Longest, I said that wrong. Longest serving board member.
Longest tenure.
I probably am your oldest board member.
That's it. All right.
You want to do your
Okay,
minute?
thank you.
What do we have?
Thanks, folks.
You just have your February 13 minutes. That was the Heffernan subdivision.
Yeah, so do we
You have you have the four that were
Alright.
here.
we have, all right, we have the February 13 minutes. And the DRB people were me, Ted, Dale, and Brenda. So, so we'll take a quick review of those and let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I've already read through and it seemed fine to me.
Mhm.
They look good. Good to you, Brenda?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I move that we approve the February 13, 2024 minutes.
Second.
Ted seconds. All those in favor? Kevin, Ted, Dale, and Brenda all vote yes.
Nice.
So 4-0 for that.
Check that off the list.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good night, folks.